Welcome to the Brave Woman Podcast. I'm your host, Tanya Lynn, founder of Sistership Circle and author of Open Your Heart and The Art of Leading Circle. I'm the mother of 2 girls, an 8 on the Enneagram, aka the Challenger, happily married to my business partner, Brent, love connecting with nature, and have put in well over 10,000 hours circling with other women. On this podcast, we will explore how to embody the brave woman so that you can take action on your dreams and desires, unapologetically speak your truth, and live life on your own terms. Grab a seat and a cup of tea, and let's get started. Welcome to the jungle. Yes, it is a jungle out there, and we are talking about the jungle of women fighting one another, not getting along with one another, in war with one another. Yes, we're talking about the sister wound. And I say that we're in a jungle because I do live in the jungle, and I've got some cute little furry monkeys outside my window, and so you might hear them. They are the howler monkeys. If you haven't heard one, they make a very, very low, loud sound, and you think that they're these giant monkeys, but they're actually super tiny and super cute. So, lots of birds too. Sister wound. Sister wound. In our last episode, we set up the next 4 episodes to talk about the 4 things that we must heal as women. This is critical for us to step into our feminine power. And the first one is the sister wound. So if you have not listened to the last episode, please go back and listen to episode 31 first, because it gives you context for the next 4 episodes. And then come back and join me here to talk about this first one. Now, before we start, I want to set an intention here. And this might feel like a really lofty vision and goal. Confirmation. What if you saw every single woman on this planet as your sister? What if? What would become possible? What if every woman honored each other as sisters? What would happen in this world? Now, again, this might feel like, what are you talking about? This does not mean that you have to be friends with every woman. This does not mean that you have to like every woman. This does not mean that you have to agree with every woman. This does not mean that you even have to speak with every woman. But this concept of sisterhood, the global, worldwide network of women, hand in hand, in solidarity, saying, we are one. There is such power in us standing together as a collective instead of tearing each other apart, ripping each other to shreds, pushing each other down, trying to one-up one another, trying to take each other out. It has to stop. We do not need to be in war against one another any longer. It's not serving us. So this sister wound comes from the patriarchy's war tactic of divide and conquer. I just love the confirmations that I'm going to be getting for this episode. And the way in which I watch this family of monkeys supporting each other and just rotating through. I mean, all these troops of monkeys. It is just so beautiful, and it is a reminder of what's possible when we are strong together. We do not need to be divided and conquered. that is where we lose our power from within and power with. The patriarchy gets its energy, feeds off of power over people, keeping people under control. And this is the number one way for women to be suppressed, for women to be afraid, for women to not have their power, is by keeping women separate. And so, turn them against each other and have a wound where women do not trust one another. When I have sat in circle with so many women over the years, specifically to talk about this, every single woman has shared her sister wound, including the women who said, I don't have a sister wound. I just cut women out of my life. That is what I am talking about. The betrayal, the competition, the jealousy, the cattiness. These are the sister wounds. And so when we've been wounded, what do? We then do the wounding. We then perpetuate the cycle. And this has been going on for centuries. When we go into thinking about the witch burning times, women were turning each other in. And we could even see that today. She's had it coming for her. That's what she deserves. Who are we to judge? And that is so part of the conditioning, is to make ourselves feel better. We feel like we have to put other people down. And sometimes we don't even realize that we're doing it. We just automatically go into the superior judgment of all the things that she's doing wrong and all the justifications of why I should not have anything to do with her. And it's the worst in the spiritual community of women. This holier than thou, I am more enlightened, I am not going to lower my vibration to be associated with that woman. What happened to the love and the light? No, only in certain situations, not when it has to do with lowering my vibration. Now, again, this doesn't mean that we have to be friends with everyone. This doesn't mean that we even have to have a second conversation with someone, right? We can honor boundaries. We can have discernment, but we must do the work. And it starts with Michael Brown's brilliant teaching in The Presence Process. Highly recommend that book if you haven't read it already. Don't shoot the messenger, get the message. If a woman triggers you, if a woman is completely, you can't even approach her, she's just so, why is she in my life? Why is this woman annoying me? Why is she blah, blah, blah? It's not about her. And it's not even about getting involved in her. It's about you seeing her as a message for you to get the message within yourself, to heal that aspect of yourself that's now being mirrored out there as that sister. That is the work. And the work is actually twofold. The work is first for us to do the internal work and look within at our own sister wounds, to heal them within. But then we must go into safe and sacred space with other women, circle, and work on our dynamic, work on our relationship with one another. Because there's only so much really we can do internally. And then it's time for us to lean into the difficult conversations, to use all the tools, and to really dive into reconciliation with another sister and see if that's possible. And the more inner work that you do, the more tools that you have, then it becomes possible to have these challenging, difficult conversations with other women who have also done the work and who are ready to heal. Because that's really how we're going to heal the collective. First doing it within, and then start coming into relationship with one another and start having the difficult conversations and working through our triggers together. Instead of canceling, avoiding, pushing away, saying you're not worth my time. If she's also done the work, if she's actually showing up in the space with you, yes, we do need to have those conversations. So, the message is that at some point in our childhood, we had a split with the sisterhood. This could have been a split with the group, or it could have been a split with an individual. And so what we want to do as the work is getting back to the furthest point that we can remember. Getting back to the originating incident. Now, most likely, sister wound is stemming from mother wound and the early ages of feeling some kind of split with mother. We're going to get into that in the next episode. But then it just starts to keep going until finally you get the message and finally you heal it. But it's going to keep repeating over and over again. So it might have started with mother, and then it went to siblings or cousins or aunties, whatever that first group of women, girls was for you. And then it might continue when you went to preschool or elementary school. And then it continues into the higher education years. But you get the point here. We just keep repeating it over and over again. And then here we are with a woman in present day who's really, really pissing us off. Very triggering. And we can see her as the messenger doing the exact same thing, bringing up the exact same pattern as way back, probably between 0 and 7 years old. So what I've heard over the years of being in circle and hearing so many stories of the sister wound is that there was either some situation with siblings, like a sister or sisters, where there was some kind of competition, comparison. Maybe you were either the favorite or you were the black sheep, and pitted against each other by mom from your sisters. Or there was some kind of betrayal from another little girl, or even worse, a betrayal from a group of girls growing up. And some of the things that I have heard are absolutely devastating of what little girls would do to one another. Not really getting the impact. And so it's really important for us to understand that this is all learned behavior and that there is nothing inherently wrong with anyone. So if we could start to see each other as sisters who have learned this behavior and are doing the best they can. And you're like, well, not that one, not that woman. She's definitely not doing the best she can. Based on what she's learned and the conditioning that she was grew up in, if you had a peek into her childhood and the way in which she was treated, you might actually develop some compassion for her. So the first thing for us to really understand is we are all good women doing the best we can with what we learned, with what we know, with the way in which we were brought up. And we have no idea what that woman grew up with. We have no idea how her mother treated her, how her father treated her, how her siblings treated her, how her teachers or her classmates treated her. We have no clue unless we ask, unless we were there. But chances are, if someone's bullying you, betrayed you, hurt you, they were hurt when they were little. We just don't know how bad, but every single one of us has experienced trauma. And trauma breeds more trauma. It's a vicious cycle. So when we can start to see the woman in front of us as a little girl being hurt, then we might be able to actually soften and come from a place of love instead of judgment. And she did this and she did that, making her out to be the bad guy, when really she might not mean to be. It's a protective thing that she's put up. It's a strategy that she's learned to keep herself safe. So we want to find what was the wound, what was the originating wound for myself, and what was my strategy. Did I become a mean girl? Or did I push women away and maybe just hang out with the guys? Or something else? What was my wound, and what was the strategy that I created to keep myself safe in the world after that wound? So we could trace it back all the way. And most likely, you're having images come up for you right now. Perhaps you know immediately what that first incident was, or close to it, depending on how traumatic it was. But we, as women, don't need to hurt each other anymore. It's time for us to put down the sword and the shield and start to heal together. I've been invited onto a lot of different podcasts to talk about the sister wound, because that is a key piece to the work that we're doing at Sistership Circle. That we hold circle to create a safe space for every woman to be seen, heard, and loved as her true self. To come into that acceptance of herself and to feel accepted by the sisterhood. And so many women come into these circles absolutely terrified of being in a group of women. So afraid, so resistant. And yet they are brave women because they want to heal this. And they know the importance of that sisterhood. And they so desperately, we all yearn for this deep connection with one another, to feel that sense of belonging, to feel like we matter and that we have a place that we can lean into, both when we're struggling, but also when we're winning, so that we could be celebrated. So let's talk a little bit about the wound and then what it looks like to actually have this worldwide sisterhood where we are fully in honor of one another. So the wound can show up as competition. And when you think about competition, women back in the day didn't have property, were essentially the property of their husband. So for a woman to be safe and secure, she had to find herself a man. That was her ticket. And so competition then starts of women competing with one another for the eligible bachelor, which still continues to this day. We also today, especially in the world of entrepreneurship, see each other as competition with our work. One of my sisters partnered with me with Sistership Circle back in 2016, and then recognized that it just wasn't for her, this partnership. And so she started doing her own thing. And on the surface, it looked like we were doing the exact same thing, holding circles, training women how to lead circles. And so at first it felt competitive. The way out of that is for us to see that we each have our own unique medicine, our own gifts and strengths and talents. And we are each individual snowflakes on this planet. No snowflake is alike. So when I was able to recognize within her unique gifts as different from mine, I could start to see that we weren't actually doing the same thing. It was different. And so if one of my ladies who was going through my training then went to do hers, I could see that she needed both my medicine and hers. And that was perfect. That was okay. So when we are in honor of ourselves and we are connected with our own magic, our essence, our strengths, our medicine, then we can start to see other women in that light. But it starts with us seeing our own brilliance and really claiming what we are here to do on this planet. Then we could come into circle with other women, seeing them for their gifts and strengths, and seeing how we might fit into partnerships, into collaborations. We can see how we can now work together versus staying separate because we're in competition with one another. So we can actually shift our relationship with competition to a healthy form of competition that's not about seeing each other as the competition from a place of scarcity, but just a way of us all doing the best we can. And we might see another sister doing well, and so it's almost like a benchmark for you now of like, wow, yeah, I want to be doing as well as she is. And so it's a game now. It's like a sport. And sports, I played basketball. Yeah, I want to beat the other team. But it's not even about the other team. It's about me doing my personal best, right? And so at the end of the game, we shake hands, we give each other five. We go up to the woman who was the best player and say, "You're amazing. Thank you for kicking my butt today." Healthy competition, not coming from scarcity, not coming from one's better than the other, but can I actually see this sister as someone who can push me to be my best, to play full out? So then the next wound is around comparison. This also goes with jealousy. And in the world of social media, especially Instagram, where it's all about looking perfect and being the influencer and having it all together and the filters and this and that, it's really easy to get jealous of other people. It's really easy to be in to be in comparison to other women. But we don't really know what's going on. We don't really know what's behind the kimono. It's only what we see. But what we see when we are jealous is actually an attribute that that woman has that we want. So what if it's no longer about her, but about what you want to cultivate within yourself? So if she looks like she's the life of the party, she walks into a room and everyone flocks to her, there's a essence of magnetism, an attribute of her owning her power that you want to cultivate within yourself. So now, instead of seeing her as someone to compare myself to, it's like, oh no, actually, she's now bringing out this part of me. She's letting me see what that looks like. Now I can bring the focus back onto myself and cultivate that within myself. The next one is cattiness and gossip and the way in which we make these sly, subtle remarks to put each other down to make ourselves feel better. Or the way in which we were grown up in a culture where gossip magazines are the thing. And so we start talking about each other, which is so damaging. But it's just really hard to stop if that's the way in which you grew up. It's a conscious choice that we must no longer talk about people, but elevate and upgrade our conversations to be about our dreams and our desires. And so we get to step into our leadership and say, you know what? I don't want to have these surface level conversations anymore. I don't want to talk about gossip anymore. I don't need to be down there in the weeds of just the who's who and all that. And so I get to then maybe interrupt a conversation or redirect a conversation to, hey, you know what? Tell me about your dreams and desires. What is it that you want? We could bring more vulnerability, more connection, more depth into our conversations with one another. And we get to remind each other of this. Say, hey, you know what? Why don't we try not gossiping? Why don't we talk just about what we're up to? I'm much more interested in what's going on in your life than what we've heard about her life, because we actually don't know the truth because she's not even here. So tell me, what's real with you? The next wound is commiseration. And this is where we are all acting like victims together. That we have these conversations that are more about relating to each other's pain bodies than to elevating and being in these empowered conversations. And so I see this happen a lot with groups of women. It becomes a complaint fest. It becomes a place where we're all just dumping and we're not actually getting out of our shit. We're staying in our shit. Now, there's a difference between commiserating and holding space for vulnerability. And this is, I think, a really key piece, is where we can hold for each other both the safe space to be vulnerable and to allow the shadow side, the dark to be revealed, to talk about the things that we're ashamed of. And then there's a way in which we can hold each other accountable to get out of our stories and to start to shift ourselves to an empowered place. So we're not hanging out and wallowing in our misery, but we're able to address it, to talk about it, and then to empower each other to shift. And that is the whole new way in which we can relate to each other in sisterhood, in sacred sisterhood, is that we don't actually buy each other's stories and we allow each other to stay stuck in our stories. But we really hold each other accountable to our greatness. And then the last one that I want to address today is contraction. And this is where we have dimmed our light so that others don't feel bad about themselves. And this has happened because either we were told and taught that we were too much, or we had maybe beauty or brains or something, and it made others feel less than around us. And so we would dim our light, dim our brilliance, so that others didn't feel bad. And what I've seen happen a lot is if you were an older sister and you had a jealous little sister, or even I've seen a couple times where a little sister had maybe a learning disability or didn't have what you had, you were put into that place of needing to contract yourself because you were feeling guilty about your position, feeling better than your sisters. And it could have even been a brother. And so instead, we need to create these circles of celebration where we are encouraging each other to shine our light, where we are celebrating each other's wins, and we are feeling empowered to all step into the light. And we actually can reframe, when I step into my light, I am giving other women permission to step into their light as well. So there's a way in which we can heal these wounds and come into a place of empowerment. And I think a really, really important piece to this is that our society has set us up to become perpetual maidens. Our society values youth over anything else. And so we are constantly wanting to preserve our youth, to be young and to be full of energy, and as if this is the best years of our life. And so we get caught in this immaturity of the maiden, the shadow of the maiden. And I believe that a lot of the sister wound is coming from this immaturity, and also a state of victimhood from the patriarchy putting us in this place to keep us small, to keep us powerless, to keep us out of our feminine wisdom. And so the maiden, in chasing her youth, isn't actually seeing the benefit of growing older and becoming wiser. And she's afraid of getting older. She's afraid of showing her age versus stepping into the initiation, into enchantress, into wise woman, and owning this power that she's cultivated from her years of experience on this planet. And with that, she steps into spiritual adulthood. Because when we are spiritual adults, we then have presence, we have our bravery to have challenging conversations, we embody responsibility, the ability to respond instead of react to our triggers. We start to shift out of these patterns that keep us stuck in the wounds, that keep attracting these women who trigger those wounds over and over again. And we think something's wrong out there, that there's something wrong with her, versus seeing that it's a mirror of whatever part of myself I haven't healed, that part of myself that I'm not fully owning, that part of me that's staying in the immaturity of the perpetual maiden. So we have an opportunity like never before. And that opportunity truly is circle. Because in a circle, we're in a container that has agreements in which we can then feel safe to have these more difficult conversations, to lean into the sisterhood. And it's there where we are having difficult conversations, where we're addressing the wound, as well as having this safe group of females to support us, to celebrate us, to accept us, to basically a place of no judgment. That is where the true healing happens. But if we never step into the circle to feel what it's like to have a place where we can trust other women, how are we ever going to learn this? We're just going to keep calling in the mistrust, the betrayal, the competition, and all the other wounds. So I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear your story of, can you remember the initial wound, that first split with the sisterhood? And can you identify your strategy? This is a conversation that we can start having now. And so I'm going to invite you to come to the page where this sits in our website. It's our show notes page, and to leave a comment and share your story. That, I think, would be extremely empowering for all the other women, so that we can see that we're not alone in this journey, that there's a lot of us who've experienced this, and there's such great, powerful healing medicine when we share out loud and when we're witnessed by others. So it might feel vulnerable. It's like, oh, it's a public place. It's on this blog. Anyone else can see it. That's the point. Why are we hiding? Why are we continuing to stay stuck in our shame, to stay stuck in the shadow? We must reveal these tender parts of ourselves, bring them out into the light in the safe space, right? And this, I will guard this space so that no one else is going to comment on yours and say something that's not going to be nice. No, I am the guardian of this space. And so, sister, I invite you to join us, and you'll see the link where you can go and write about your story, write what happened to you, and together we heal. You just listened to this show. I'd love for you to leave the Brave Woman podcast an honest review. Reviews help podcasts like this one grow,
making it more possible for me to devote my time, energy, and money to its production. If you take a screenshot of your review and email it to support@sistershipcircle.com, we'll send you one of our archetype activations as a thank you gift. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it.
Up next, do you sometimes struggle with asking for and receiving what you need and desire? What about setting healthy boundaries while staying connected to the other person? We're going to examine why we become self-sacrificing martyrs in the next episode, Healing the Mother Wound.